To another special edition of The Thoughtful Bro. It's a juicy one today with Brendan Slocumb. This is a red hot author. You're getting it on the ground floor, debut author. He's got a 2-book deal, so you know more good stuff is coming down the pipe. Spend 45 minutes with us here today. You're going to love this. We're even going to have a little musical interlude. It's going to be a great 45 minutes. I hope you're just sitting there, opening up your sandwich for lunch, and you're going to be entertained. A few words before we get started. As you know, A Thoughtful Bro is here every Tuesday at 2 for what makes great books tick and what makes great authors tick. We are hosted, of course, by the mothership, A Mighty Blaze. A Mighty Blaze, for anyone on earth remaining who does not yet know, is an all-volunteer initiative to help writers reach readers during COVID and beyond in our increasingly virtual world. At A Mighty Blaze, we are never, ever, ever asking for your money. If you want to support us or show the love, just do it by subscribing or liking the video or commenting or asking our fabulous authors a question. If you'd also like to find out more about A Mighty Blaze, you can go to our website, amightyblaze.com, and you can subscribe to our newsletter. It's very non-intrusive, low impact, carbon neutral. You just get an email every Sunday that says, here's the amazing interviews that are coming up this week on both The Thoughtful Bro and all the other shows that we have. And that's it. That's all on amightyblaze.com. But if you are, in fact, in the mood to throw a little cash around, please spend it on rip-roaring debut thrillers like The Violin Conspiracy, books that bring you inside the mind of a classical musician at the highest levels of competition, and also do a deep dive on race and the history of race in the United States. It's sort of a mashup that I never knew I needed, but that I just completely loved. Again, it's called The Violin Conspiracy by Brendan Slocumb. If you want to ask Brendan a question, please do it just by putting it in the chat on YouTube, Twitter, or Facebook. As for a teaser for next week, I'm going to have on Jean Hanff-Korelitz. So Jean is the author of the New York Times bestselling book, The Plot, which came out last year, which is actually another book, another kind of thriller about an artist. That one's about a novelist who steals someone else's story. But she's got a new book out. She also, by the way, did this book called You Should Have Known, which became that hit HBO show, The Undoing with Nicole Kidman. So Jean is just on a tear right now. And she's got a new book coming out called The Latecomer. And I think it actually pubs next Tuesday. So we're going to be talking to her on her pub day. That is next week. But on to this week's guest. Brendan Slocumb is a graduate of the University of North Carolina at Greensboro with a degree in music education. He has performed on violin with the Washington Metropolitan Symphony, the McLean Symphony, the Prince George's Philharmonic, and the Alexandria Symphony. He currently serves as the concertmaster for the Nova Annandale Symphony Orchestra. In 2005, Brendan was named Teacher of the Year for Robert E. Lee High School and has been named to the Who's Who of American teachers. When Brendan was 9 years old, he started playing violin through a public school music program. Music literally saved his life. Friends he grew up with today are sitting in jail. While they were out running the streets, Brendan was in rehearsals. While they were breaking into people's homes, Brendan was practicing Mozart. His violin opened the door to opportunity, and he just charged on through. His book, as I said, is called The Violin Conspiracy. We're going to put links in the chat to buy it. The New York Times called it a page-turning musical Bildungsroman cleverly contained within a literary thriller. It also became a Good Morning America book club pick, and it has just been taking the world by storm. Brendan, welcome to The Thoughtful Bro.
Hey.
The most concise response to an introduction I've ever heard.
No, I'm really, really happy to be here. I'm really excited. I was just like, okay, who are you talking about, dude? That's some good stuff. Wow.
Hey, it's all on your website. Okay, so Brendan, I love the book. It's not only a great thriller, it's also kind of, as I said, this kind of deeper story about race and kind of all the ways the world can tear apart a successful Black artist. There's so much to get into here. But I just want to start by saying that I've done a lot of Thoughtful Bro episodes, talked to a lot of authors on book tour, and you seem like the happiest author on book tour I have ever come across. Why? What is your secret, Brendan? Why are you so happy?
Medication. No, when I say this, I am not exaggerating. This is not hyperbole. I am the most grateful person on the face of the planet for the success that I have been given. didn't have to happen. And it just, I was chosen, and I am so happy to be in the position that I'm in right now. I'm so happy that someone liked this book. I'm so grateful for all the people that helped me through every aspect of my life. That here comes the tat show.
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
Oh, wait for it.
Look at that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, man.
And I get to look at it every day. So, I mean, what's not to be happy about? It's I get to wake up every day, and I have a ton of new friends, and I'm and I am reconnecting with old friends. And it's just amazing that, people like this book, and I'm just thrilled and really, really happy about it.
Oh, well, it just comes through, and it comes through, and it's such a joy to see. Every time I watched a couple other interviews you did, and every time I just couldn't help smiling as soon as you came on camera. So wait, we had an interesting question in the chat there from Margaret. Let's just put that one up because it's just relevant. Thanks for this question, Margaret. What is the most exciting thing that has happened since the release of this book? Was it when you were on Crime Time?
Oh yeah, I love Hank. Hank is like my new girl. Yeah, we're like this now. Absolutely. Yeah, that was fun. I was actually in Dallas when I did that interview. I was doing a performance and a book signing at the Dallas Museum of Art, and it's like, oh man, I'm supposed to be rehearsing with my accompanist, and this interview is scheduled for right in between. Yeah, Hank's my girl, and it's like, okay, I got to run back and do this interview. And that was the first time that I had met Hank, and she was just amazing. And she's just been incredibly supportive. And yeah, everything. Look, I'm just happy. I'm very, very happy. And everything is exciting. Every day gets better and better and better. And I couldn't be more grateful.
Oh, that's amazing. I agree, Christina. The energy is infectious. All right, we got to stop looking at the chat, though. We got to focus here, Brendan. We're going to have a great interview here. All right. Here we go. So I guess why don't we just start with the thumbnail sketch of the book, and then we'll use that as a jumping off point.
All right. So the Violin Conspiracy is a story of Ray, who discovers that his old family fiddle is actually a priceless Stradivarius violin. Nice to see you too, Lynn. And with this discovery, it catapults him into superstardom in the world of classical music. And right before the Tchaikovsky competition, which is the Olympics of classical music, his violin is stolen. Will he compete? Will he get it back? Was it his family who thinks he should sell it and split $10 million so they can buy houses or something? Was it the family of the slave owners, their descendants, who feel like the violin rightfully belongs to them because they feel like Ray's ancestor stole it from them? Was it Mike the doorman? Who was it? We don't know. Got to read it to find out.
Oh my God. I loved it. I love how everybody, I mean, it's a classic thing, but everybody's a suspect at the beginning. It's so good. Well, look, Ray has promised that he would play us a little something brief, but I mean, just first, before we do that, just one question first, Ray. This is amazing.
Dude, you realize you just called me Ray twice, right?
Oh my God. Well, interestingly enough, Brendan says that Ray, the main character of his book, is 92% him. So I was sort of 92% right, Brendan, in calling you Ray.
True that. My bad. Yeah, you're good.
All right. So Brendan has said that he would play a little something for us. But Brendan, before we go there, can you just tell us about I think one of the best parts of your story and, you growing up and everything was this connection that you had to classical music, and it kind of I remember you talking one time about how the first time you heard Mozart, what an experience that was. You were just a little boy.
Yeah. I just had never heard anything like that before. And I said, what is this? And music was always present in my house. Hey, Jennifer, she's one of the old students. Music was always present in my house. And, when I heard this Mozart, what is that? I'd never heard anything like that before. And I just thought it was really cool. And it was from my third grade music teacher. And she played Mozart 40 and, bum ba da dum ba da da. It's a bird, it's a plane, it's a Mozart. And I'm like, whoa, that is the coolest thing I've ever heard ever. I need more of this. And so I was just hooked. I was hooked from that Mozart symphony, and I just loved it ever since. And that's how it happened.
But it's also just amazing that you had kind of the infrastructure or whatever the word is around you in your school to take somebody with that natural affinity and take him to the moon if he wants, right?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was truly a blessing. I look back and I'm like, had I not had that, there's no telling what I would be doing, where I would be. I would not have met some amazing people. I would not have this life that I am living currently without, that public school music structure. So I'm a fierce advocate for public school music, and arts really are crucial. They truly, truly are. They do save lives. I spoke to a bunch of librarians a couple of weeks ago, and the librarians and classroom teachers, and I told them, y'all are some of the most important people on the planet, and thank you guys for what you do. It saved me.
Yeah, love it. All right, so Brendan, if you could, just a few minutes of something
right.
special.
I'll give you an opening to one of the pieces that Ray played. Let me know if you can hear this first. I want to make sure that it's coming out through. You hear that?
Loud and clear.
Okay, all right. So here we go. Now, I haven't practiced today, so I'm going to take this one out. Haven't practiced today, so you have to excuse me if it sounds jacked up. It's in there somewhere. All right. That's enough of that.
Bravo. God, I haven't heard a live violin played in maybe, I don't know, 5-10 years or something. And like never, ever in my life have I heard somebody like sort of just play a violin for me and like, or sort of like in a private setting like that, one-on-one, like only when you're hearing the violin. And like, it just makes you realize like what a different, rich kind of magical sound that is compared to just the top 40 I'm popping on the radio,
Yeah, it's I just look at it as, it's just every day, and I'm just very, very lucky to be able to, just be able to play and have access to it and just have been exposed to it. It's really, I'm just an extremely lucky person.
Right.
Excuse me, I'm wiping sweat here. I have to turn the air on in my apartment. It's like feels like Egypt in here. It's crazy.
Do you need a minute to turn it on? Or
no, I'm good.
Okay.
That means letting windows down and everything. I'm not doing. It's like 95 degrees here today.
All right. So there's a couple questions I have for you just right at the top here about the difference between the two forms, because it's not every day that I get somebody on who is like very accomplished in two very different artistic mediums as you are. And so the first question that I want to ask you is like, so classical music, like playing the violin, playing, Mozart and Chopin and whoever it is, like this is like a centuries old, highly demanding, highly rigorous art form that like you can't even really begin to do it, in like for, I would imagine, like for a very long time. Like you have to practice and learn. Whereas like the American literary thriller, I mean, look, it's a younger art form. I mean, it's a younger art form. It's like there's a lot more freedom. It's not a performative art form where you're kind of taking somebody else's work. You're composing the work yourself. But I'm just kind of wondering, just right there with that as a starting point, like how did you see the difference between these two art forms?
Believe it or not, I found a bunch of similarities between them. Because as I was writing, I do everything in terms of music. And I was talking to one of my friends today who's actually a violinist. And he said, yeah, you know what? You were a player before you were a writer. So we really need to get together and play some more stuff. I was like, yeah, you know what? You're right. Like when I'm writing, it's everything is music based. Like when I'm practicing, there's an introduction, there's a middle section, and then there's a finale. So when I outlining everything, I outline things that way, and it's a natural way for me to do things just because of the hours that I used to spend practicing every day. It's like 3.5 hours practicing my fiddle every day, and then I would sit down. When I started writing, I would sit down and write, for 3 or 4 hours, and it was no big deal because I was accustomed to that anyway. But yeah, I really do see the two as interchangeable. Just because of the structure, there's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end. And what you do with each section, it really depends on how you're feeling that day. If I feel like I'm really going to focus on the ending today or focus on the middle today, then yeah, that's what I'm going to do.
Right. There was a great line. There's a few different lines. I mean, so one of the real treats of this book is hearing you describe the feeling of playing music, describing like what makes a great musician, what makes a great performance. And you do, I mean, many people who have reviewed and talked to you about this book say how accessible you make that, and how kind of like to a layperson, clearly like myself, who doesn't know a lot about classical music, you can kind of bring me into the mind of an elite performer. But one of the things that did jump out at me as a storyteller and who's somebody who has a show like this one about telling stories, there's this one point where you say like, you know, Ray is kind of in there and he wants to focus on, he doesn't want to be distracted from telling Mozart's story. And I just thought there were a few different places where you talk about kind of the story of a piece you're playing. And can you tell me about that? Like, is there always a story and melody? And is that part of being a great performer, is understanding that story?
I do believe that part of being a good performer is understanding the story and actually being able to relate the story as well. When I was teaching band and orchestra, like for high school, I would always tell my students when I gave them a new piece of music, this is the story behind this piece. So you know what the composer was thinking, you know what his intent was, so we can play it that way. You know, anybody, it's just notes. Otherwise, anybody can play notes. And I want you to be able to feel what the composer felt. Otherwise, it was like a waste of time for him to do it. So being able to express what the composer wanted is, I say, Tony, being able to express what the composer wanted. You know, I really think that's just as important as playing the right notes. And, you know, as I was writing, I'm like, okay, I was using all types of technical jargon. It made perfect sense to me, like these musical terms and everything. And then I would let someone read it who was a non-musician. They were like, may as well be French. I don't know what this is. And then, okay, I have to go back and make it a bit more accessible. So I put in a ton of metaphors and I'm like, okay, so when I play this piece, it reminds me of blah, blah, blah. Oh, okay. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, I would have to, I don't want to say simplify it, but I would just change it up a bit for people who are non-musicians.
So another thing that you say about music is, and part of there's this, I love the kind of like rise of the artist. I mean, the New York Times called it a Bildungsroman, and like there's an aspect.
Do you know, I had no idea what that word meant until I read that. I was like, what does this mean? I looked it up. I was like, does anybody know what this means? That was a new one for me.
Well, that's funny because it's like you were writing about music in this complicated way that we non-musicians couldn't understand, and here's the New York Times writing about that in a way that you, the non-writer, couldn't understand. But anyway, take that. No, but one of the great things about like the rise of Ray is this way that people see something in him. It's always a great, anytime you have like a biopic, like and you watch some movie about like some great artist, like there's a moment where some mentor figure or something is like, young man, you have got it. But the way they talk about it is the way that, so what's different about you, Ray, is I'm Brendan, stop it. I know that you're Brendan. I'm talking about Ray. They're saying what's different about you, Ray, the character, is that you have an emotional connection. You're not just playing the notes, as it were. You have an emotional connection. Can you just talk about that, like what that means? I mean, because I just feel like, I would say one more thing. I feel like in classical music, of like almost all performative arts, I mean, like, you know, the band for interpretation, or like, the band for expression, self-expression is the narrowest among the art forms. You know, I mean, like, obviously as a novelist, you've got the blank page. As a painter, you've got the canvas. But even in the performative arts, I mean, if you're like a cover band, you know, if you're an actor, there's a lot of range for interpretation on kind of how to do it. But in classical music, it's like everybody's just trying to play those notes exactly. But I wouldn't be able to understand it, but you understand when somebody is really connecting and interpreting the music in an interesting way.
Absolutely. And those are the performances that I really enjoy not only watching but being a part of, because the best performers who take that 100% just seriously and literally, they bring you as an audience member in with them. They take you on the journey with them. If I'm playing Mozart Concerto No. 5, the A major, it's a great piece of music, and you know it's a happy, upbeat piece of music. And if you're just playing the notes and you're not into it, Okay, so great. You played all of those. That was wonderful. Mozart was very happy. But when he wrote that, it's like, all right, he was a decent violinist, and his father encouraged him to do more violin music. And so he wrote five concertos, yeah, I think there was five or six. I don't know. I'm old. Tomorrow's my birthday, so yeah, that's the excuse.
Happy birthday.
Yeah. All right, so when he's playing these things and interpretation. One thing you said about interpretation is very narrow. One thing that I have always I have not agreed with is you could have one piece of music and you could have 10 people play it, and there will be 10 different interpretations, and every one of them will be fantastic. And that's the great thing about classical music. Yes, the composer's viewpoint is basically just the starting line. That's just the roadmap that you're going to take, and whichever road that you want to diverge to divulge, whatever, whichever path you take, it's up to you to do, and you can totally do that. That's one of the wonderful things about classical music. Like, I listened to several different recordings of several of the same piece just to get different ideas on how to play them. Like, I'm working on a Schubert quartet right now, and I'm really excited about two recordings I found, because I was like, I want to play it just like that, because I can feel the emotion in this, and that's that's what I want to give the audience when they listen to this, when they listen to me play this. So yeah, I think there's a huge range of interpretation, for classical music and musicians.
So that sort of begs the question, when you started to write this novel, because this novel reads like, oh, it just goes down easy. It goes down just like a cool glass of iced tea on a hot day. I mean, this book is so smooth, and it just bumps right along. It has a beautiful rhythm to it. Who did you read, or how did you kind of prepare? I mean, this is your first book. I mean, how did you figure out how to do this? What were your influences?
Well, I let a lot of people read. I let a lot of people read it, and I took every piece of advice. I took all of the feedback, good and bad. I took it all. I kept what I could use, and I just discarded what I couldn't. But the pacing was really important to me. I have a really, really, really good agent who's a stickler about pacing. You lose pacing here if this is here. You might want to take this and move it here. And there was a couple of fights, but I was like, you know what, you're right. In the end, you're absolutely right. And I would read through again. Yeah, that keeps it going. And I'm one of those people who I want to be entertained. And it's like, if I am reading something or watching something, I want to be entertained. I don't want to turn the page after this huge climax and then, 18 pages of nothing. I don't want to do that. So I want to keep people entertained and just keep the page going. And I'm a huge Agatha Christie fan. The way that I structure my stories and how I determine who did it, it's all based on her. I had no idea who the thief was going to be until I got to the very end of the book. And I was like, I'm going to pull in Agatha Christie. She always, writes the entire story. And then she goes back and says, it's going to be you because of this reason. And so, yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's how she worked?
That's how she did it. Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So that's me, and I'm going to that's how I structure everything, and I'm always listening to feedback. Always. This is great. This sucks. This is awesome. This is horrible. I'll take what I can, and I leave what I don't need, and I take it all, and I try to use it.
I wonder if it's like your extensive background as an artist in a different medium and such an exacting medium that kind of primed you to be able to take feedback in that way, because the way that you're talking about taking feedback right now is not normal in the in the world of writers. I mean, I don't know if I've ever heard a writer say, I just take all the feedback. And I mean, I don't know.
I think you might be right. The first time someone said to me, well, first I'll say this. When the book first got published, my goal was to have one person like it. That's all I wanted. One person to like this book, and I was happy. I was set. First review I read was great. The second review I read was terrible. They hated it, thought it was awful. And I was like, okay, you know what? I got one person to like it. That's all I needed. And I discarded that poor review. And that's their opinion. Opinions are like elbows. Everybody's got one or two. And I was going to say something else, but it's a daytime show, so I can't say that. But so just going on, and when as musicians, as young musicians, we're constantly being coached on what you can do better. And you've got good teachers and you've got horrible teachers that will, instead of telling you what you need to do to improve, they tell you everything is wrong. I don't need you to tell me that. I know it was wrong. I know it sucked. I know. Tell me what I can do to make it better. So I've been, dealing with that my entire life. And I try to, when I'm teaching my students, if something is great, I'll tell them that was sick. It was great. And then if it sucks, that was my ears are bleeding and I get that, take that ice pick out of my ear because it was terrible, awful. This is what you need to do to fix it. Do this, do this, do this. And then it gets better. So I'm accustomed to taking, criticisms and critiques. And, I just, I take what I can use and I discard everything else. And
oh, that is great. A great kind of sermon for writers to hear. All right. Now let's talk about the MacGuffin at the center of this book, which is a Stradivarius. And one of the great MacGuffins, an innovative MacGuffin. I've never heard of a MacGuffin that was so great as this. And I loved it. And it was such a fat hook. It got into me right from the beginning. But so the Stradivarius, it happens on the first few pages. We're not giving anything away here. You were talking about it. And then they say, give us $10 million or $5 million. It's worth $10 million. And you'll get your instrument back. All right. So a few questions about a Stradivarius, because you're clearly an expert on this. Okay. One is, why can't the computer technology of today make a better violin than a guy living 200 years ago in Italy?
No one knows. That is one of the mysteries of the world. And the only way to find out is to break one open and look at it from the inside out. And no one's willing to do that. That's the only way to do it.
Oh, is that true? Like You're not kidding. Like if somebody just cut it in half, like maybe they'd figure it out.
They would totally be able to figure out everything with the internal workings and everything. They've analyzed the varnish, the shape, everything, but you have to break it open.
They can't just stick an X-ray in there or something.
That doesn't work like that. Doesn't work like that. Yeah, it's insane.
But it's also, that's a satisfying answer. It's like, okay, well, there is an answer why we can't do it. We can't replicate it. Another question is, so Ray, who comes from a disadvantaged background in this book, he has a $10 million Stradivarius, and other people have asked you the question, which is begged there, which is like, why doesn't he just sell it for $10 million and then all his problems will go away? And obviously he loves his music and so on and so forth. But my question is, would you, Brendan, if you had a Stradivarius somehow through the same means you inherited a Stradivarius or whatever, would you sell it for $10 million?
No, I wouldn't. Not for $10 million bucks. No, I wouldn't. I mean, it's the people that play on Strads, they play on them until they can't play anymore. And there's a reason for that. There's probably less than 600 of these instruments in the world, and they are so highly sought after. And that crap that I just played a little bit ago, if I was playing that on a Strad, it would sound a million times better. And not that it was actually, it was horrible because I haven't warmed up today, but
I loved it.
Well, I appreciate that. Thanks. A Stradivarius is the top of the top of the top of the top. That's it. You cannot get any better than that. And if it's just a matter of money, so you sold it, and now what are you going to play on? You'll never be able to go back to that. You were at the top, and now you have to actually take a few steps down. Well, yeah.
Now, is there a kind of market for playing a Stradivarius? Could Jeff Bezos, who's gone to the moon, be like, I also want to play for 5 minutes on a Stradivarius because I've got money to throw around? Does it work like that, or what? I mean, if you wanted to play one.
I think it depends on the owner of the instrument. A lot of them are owned through museums, and there are some private owners who, loan their instruments out. And like Joshua Bell plays on one. Rachel Barton Pine, I think she plays on a Del Yesu, which is, almost as good as a Strad. It's right up there. And certain people have them. They just sit around, and of course, money talks. If I had enough money to say, hey, I'll give you $6 million to let me play that for 5 minutes, I would absolutely do it. And fingers crossed, hopefully I'm going to have the opportunity to play one. I'm going to New York in a couple of weeks, and I've been invited to a classical music jam session where I get to play play on a Strad. And yeah, I'm probably going to stay there with it and sleep with it under my pillow and just not want to give it up. So that might, y'all might want to hire some extra security when I come in, because it might be coming back to DC with me.
Wait, hold on. So this is really happening. You're going to play one?
It looks like it thus far. Yeah, we're trying to set it up and with a date and everything. So
Oh
we're
my
working on it.
God.
I know it's sick, right? I know.
That's so sick. Oh, I wish I sort of like I love having you on right now, but I wish I'd had you on after that so you could like describe it to me. But I mean, like
Dude, I'll
that.
come back. I'll totally come back.
Okay, okay. All right. Now, look, I want to pivot. We got about 15 minutes left, and we have some great questions from the audience, but I want to pivot into some of the race stuff in the book, which I love so much. And this might be like a hard segue here, but I want to talk about the Strad as like a metaphor for race in America. And I'm just wondering if you saw it how I saw it. I mean, so one of the things that's going on in the book is like there's all these people around Ray who might have stolen it and have a motive to steal it and would have been able to steal it if they wanted to. And so the joy of the book is figuring out who that is. But I thought one of the most deft things you did in the book was making it so it's like his great grandfather who originally got this violin, Pop, from, he was a slave. He was born a slave and he got it from the slave owner. And it's just like enraging, and it's just great writing, great storytelling that like this, the descendants of that slave owner now put a claim on this, and they say this is actually our property. And honestly, Brendan, I thought that was just such a deft metaphor for how race works in this country, in the sense that the Black person or Black people have kind of protected and maintained and created this wealth. And then the moment that there is like a profit to be earned, the white person swoops in and says, and appropriates it and says, I have the right to that. Just like the way, Black people cultivated the land and the white people profited from it. Here, this Black family over generations has protected this violin. And then the white people come in at the last minute. And it also just makes you think, well, where did that wealth come from for that original slave owning family to even buy that violin in the first place? If indeed they did in fact buy it, well, it was the wealth created by the slaves on that plantation. So anyway, I just found it like totally infuriating, and I found it just sort of a fresh way to talk about race relations. Did you see it that way, or am I reading too much into it?
No, I don't think you're reading too much into it at all. The funny thing about it is when I was writing this, it originally was, I wasn't trying to make a statement about racism. I wasn't trying to make any statements about, anything that had to do with race, but it just happened that this is the way that the story unfolded. A lot of this is taken, like you mentioned earlier, from my own personal experiences. It just happened that everything lined up perfectly. And with race in America, it's a funny thing. It's like I wanted the racial elements in this book to be as accurate as possible, especially chapter 33, when Nora's letter to she's having this letter that Pop is dictating to her. That was very difficult for a lot of people to read, and I actually toned that chapter down. A lot of times, and I remember when I was in school, America had slaves, Black people picked cotton, Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, and that's all we got. And I really wanted people to get a sense of, there's so much more to it. It was a horrible, horrible, horrible thing. And I'm not asking anyone to apologize or anything. I just want people to know this is how it was. So yeah, it really has given rise to a lot of good discussion about race relations in America. And I'm happy that it has, because a lot of people's eyes have been opened to things that they just were not aware of.
And how did you, you were writing this kind of in the wake of George Floyd. Can you just comment on, the reading public's A, interest in such stories as this, and B, willingness to believe such stories as this?
Funny. In the beginning, pre George Floyd, people were, nah, this is over the top. This is way too much. Nothing like this ever happened. And I'm so accustomed to hearing that. I would tell my friends about experiences that I had, and they would just be like, Brendan, you're exaggerating. You're just overreacting. No, this is not real. You're just, no. I'm like, okay. And then post George Floyd, it was like, whoa, wait a minute. Okay. This actually might be really happening. And, when I tell people that these things happen, they're much more open to at least listening, post George Floyd. And I hate that event occurred, but, it really was the opening that a lot of us needed to be able to share stories like this that people would be willing to receive. So I think people have definitely taken these stories to heart, and they're much more open to listening and to understanding that, wow, everything is not the way that it seems for me. My perception of how things are so much different than yours for this reason, this reason, this reason. And, that's what I've gotten from a lot of people. Just the fact that they are willing to listen, whereas before it was like, no, you're exaggerating. It's not like that. And don't tell me that it's not like that, because it's my life and I have to live it every single day. And for you to, invalidate my experiences, that's not cool. And people actually came around and to this way of thinking. They're like, whoa, I need to rethink how I look at things and how I look at people, because I never knew that this aspect existed of life. I had no idea until I read this. I'm like, all right, well, you got something out of it. Awesome.
Wow, very powerfully said. And one thing that certainly I personally have thought a lot more about since George Floyd in the last few years is this kind of like game I do when I'm trying to kind of like look at a situation that's in the news or look at a situation in a book, which is just sort of like, what if their races were reversed, right? Like, what if this happened to a white person, or what if this happened to a black person? How would it be different? And there's so many great things in here like that. But like one of them, for example, is, just thinking about how if it was a white violinist who had their violin stolen or lost, I mean, first of all, it would be this big outrage. And then I could just imagine, them saying like, oh, well, he's a classical musician. I mean, his mind is in the clouds. He's a genius. You can't expect him to keep track of this violin. Like, there'd be all this pity. And then there's this way that Ray in the book is talking about how like it, when he loses his $10 million violin, it just confirms everybody's narrative that they already have. Oh, he's just incompetent. He is like irresponsible. That's the way Black people are. And it just drives you nuts. But I thought that was a powerful kind of thing that the book got at.
Yeah, I mean, I get that a lot, and I used to get that a lot too. So my violin is an extension of my body. When I go into the grocery store after rehearsal, it's always on my back, always. Yeah. I take it into the bathroom with me. I learned from this story when I'm in a hotel, it's always with me. I don't let anyone come in, and so it's unfortunately a reinforcement of what a lot of people think, and I'm not quite sure why people think that, but the reasons are their own, and they do. And hopefully this story will open their eyes to, oh, maybe I'm doing that unconsciously and I'm not aware of it. And I just want people to be able to get something from it, to know that there are other points of view, and everything is not all sunny and roses just because it is for you. It's not that way for everyone. Just be aware of that.
Yeah. And one of the most jarring aspects of, I think, race in this book was that, this is just a very rarefied world, the world of classical music. And it's a world that not a lot of people are in, kind of like relative to the rest of society. But it's like, to me, like the way I think about classical music is like, oh, well, it's like only for the most sophisticated people. I mean, this is like the kind of, one of the great examples of our civilization is like what we do with classical music. And then like to hear like the N-word thrown around in those environments and to see the racism there, it was just so jarring in the best way. And it was just so fresh, and it was like, oh, like, really? And it really struck me is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. It's living proof. I there have been so many times where I've gone in to play, a gig, and they will look at me like, who are you? The garbage can's over there. You can go and empty it. And I'm so not kidding. I'm not even kidding. And it's just stuff like that. And just kind of smile and it's always, you're always having to prove yourself, or at least I am. I'm always having to prove. The moment I take out a violin and I just kind of okay, well, I'm sure the garbage can is there, but I go something like that, and they're like, oh wow, this guy's legitimate, so we better look at him seriously. Unfortunately, I'll go dressed like this, like with jeans and a t-shirt, and they're just kind of like, who is this guy? Whereas a white counterpart could do the exact same thing, and it's just like, oh, that must be the conductor, or the I don't know, just people.
Okay. Oh, but I will say that, kind of going back to what I said at the beginning, and like this kind of like radiant disposition you have, which sets you apart from, I think, most writers. I mean, writers are happy when their books come out, but I mean, you just seem extra happy, and I just love it.
Dude, but happy. I'm very happy.
It's amazing. So there's this great part in the book where Ray is talking. This is the voice of Ray. But again, you have said that you're 92% Ray. So I'm sure this is in some way how you feel as well. I just love this line so much. And he's dealing with yet another racist encounter. And he says, you say about Ray had dealt with insults all his life. It was just something you did as a Black person. You learned to overlook the insults to get what was more important to you. And it's just the way that you see Ray chasing this dream and just like eating it again and again, just like, I'm not going to react. I'm going to just keep moving forward and get what I need out of this person, out of this situation, so I can climb the mountain. And I just love that.
A lot of people, I've heard that a lot of people were actually irritated that Ray just kept taking and taking and taking and taking it. And I'm like, you know what? As a Black man, we have options. I did not want this to go in the direction of the angry Black man. Everything is against him and you're just mad all the time. Yes, we have a right to be mad. Yes, absolutely. Be irritated, be upset, be angry. But it's how you deal with it, and I could be mad. I could be pissed because someone, said something racist to me or threw something or thinks that I'm not capable of doing something. But you know what is that going to do for me in the end? That's not going to do a thing for me. So I can just take it. If I can get something from it, I'll keep it. If not, I'll just discard it. And plus, he was always thinking about his grandmother. She always instilled in him that respect. And, she just wanted to make sure that he was going to be set because she knew he was going to have to face, in life. So she wanted him to be ready.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to get to I see a bunch of audience questions. We're going to get to that in a minute. Just one or two more questions from me. One is like your road to publication was interesting to me. I don't know all the details, but I remember hearing you say or reading that you said at one point that if this all happened in the wake of George Floyd, and it usually takes kind of like a year and a half before a book gets published from when it's bought, it must have been written quite quickly. And I think I remember you saying that like you and your agent, you were sort of like, before the book was even finished, you were like sending pages to your agent and then your agent was editing them on the fly. Okay, so the first question there is like, how did you get an agent if you didn't have a finished manuscript?
All right. So COVID-19 was just messed up for everybody, but this is one good thing that came out of COVID. I literally was flipping through the internet, like we did so many times during COVID, and selling books in the age of COVID. And I was like, oh, that looks interesting. So I submitted a terrible, terrible science fiction story. Terrible. And my agent was like, yeah, this is awful, but you got a good voice, so you should try writing what you know. And it's not science fiction. I was like, all right, cool. I know music. So I wrote a little bit. He's like, you know what? I could sell this. I was like, seriously? Yeah. He's like, you got to write every day. I'm like, no big. Hey, I have nothing else to do. I will do that. So I would write and then I would send it to him. And he's like, yeah, this is good. Keep going this direction. No, this sucks. And then we would fight about stuff. And then, and he believed in me. And I'm forever grateful for that. He honestly believed in me. He said, this is a good story. You have a good voice. You can do this. I'm like, if you say so, I will absolutely put 100% into it. And I put 100% into it and it paid off. And I got to give it up to my agent, who is a phenomenal guy. And, it just, ta-da.
Yeah. Do you want to name your agent just to give him the full shout out?
No, just because his head is going to get like this and I can't deal with it. Like, no.
All right. And then we're going to go into questions after this final question, but I wanted to make sure I get this in. There's a great kind of moment, in your afterword, you talk about how passionate you are about music and what music has meant to you. And you say, there's this recurring quote in the book, which I think one of Ray's relatives said, we are here for a reason, to throw up torches and light the way for others. I think it's actually a quote from a different author that they use. But, and I know you just sort of feel that way about your own kind of role with children and teaching and music. And I just wanted to give you a minute to kind of talk about throwing up the torch.
I will be super brief in this. I had so much help. So many positive influences in my life growing up when I needed them, when I needed them the most. It's one reason I wanted to become a teacher, so that I could give back. My teachers, they helped me when I didn't have an instrument. They found a way for me to get one. When I couldn't get to regional auditions, they found a way to get me there. When I had nothing, when I didn't have a tuxedo, they found a way to get me something. And I was always being helped. And that was so life-changing that I wanted to be able to do something for other people just to show my gratitude. So when I became a teacher, my door is always open, whatever it is that I can do for you. The most important thing I want you to get out of my class is I want you to be a good person. Notes, music, you're not all going to be concert violinists. That's totally fine. I just want you to be a good person. I want you, whatever I can do to help you. I know what it's like. I know what it feels like to need and not be able to have. So if I can do that for you, I'm there for you 100%. So I always wanted to give that back to my students, and hopefully I have, and so I think it's all paying off. It's all coming back to me in a great way. So I'm very, very blessed. I'm very blessed.
What a beautiful sentiment. Thank you, folks. There is a connection between gratitude and joy. All right, so let's go to the audience questions for a few minutes here. Trisha, hi, Trisha. What was the biggest lesson Brendan learned during the process of writing the book, and will he write another? Ooh, I know the answer, but go ahead, Brendan.
What up, Trish? The biggest lesson. Wow, I learned to be very vulnerable because there was a lot of stuff that was personal to me that I considered putting into the book. It's like, well, you know what? The entire world is going to know this. And it's like, you know what? If it tells a good story and someone gets something out of it, sure, it'll absolutely be worth it. So I learned to be vulnerable. And I am just finishing the last bit of edits for my second book. This is round number 3 of edits, and it gets better and better and better, but I can't start writing my third book until I finish the edits to this one. So, this one will be out next year. It's called The Composer's Last Score. It's a great story. If I do say so myself, I'm slightly biased. Just a quick elevator pitch. America's preeminent composer has his 150th anniversary celebration, and the family that runs his foundation has hired a musicologist to do some research into this celebration that's going to be broadcast worldwide. During his research, he discovers that the composer may not have written any of his music and that it was appropriated from a Black woman who we now know would be living with autism, and the family will stop at nothing to keep that a secret.
Bum, bum, bum.
I know, right?
That sounds awesome. And it also, there's this old saying, like writers really thrive and artists really thrive when they're kind of making the art that only they could make. And it just seems like, I know you could write that book, like you in particular. That is like a book that you can write. And it's just, this book was so smooth, and the issues it dug into were so fresh and unique, and it sounds like it's more of the same coming.
I hope so. I hope people like it. It's very, very different from the Violin Conspiracy. So I'm hoping that I don't get pigeonholed and say, well, it's not this kind of book. I just want people to enjoy the story. It's a really enjoyable story. And, my other book topics that I've already tossed out to my agent, he's on board. I'm like, yes, I can't wait to start writing them after I finish these revisions. Edward is a stickler, and he's great. He's given me some fantastic revisions to do, and they're all very, very thoughtful. And I just want to make sure that I can implement all of them.
Yeah.
Amazing.
How it goes. Yeah. I know how it goes. All right, let's get 1 or 2 more questions before we wrap from Margaret. Hello, and thanks, Brendan. I work in writing and editing, but I also play cello for fun. I'm trying to find ways to learn to play my late dad's violin. Where would you recommend I start? Great question.
Oh, that's awesome, Margaret. I would actually recommend, and you probably know about the Suzuki method. That's probably going to be the easiest way to start, and you've got a head start by playing the cello already. So I would start with, Suzuki book number 1 and just play through and just have fun with it. Play for fun. It's fun and in your face.
Awesome. All right, let's do one more audience question. Another Margaret. Does Brendan combine his 2 talents in composing music as well?
I am actually a songwriter for the band that I sing in, and I've written all of our songs. So if that counts, then yes.
I didn't know there was like a third stream here. God, you're making the rest of us feel inadequate here.
Good stuff, dude. Good stuff. Good stuff.
All right. So we are going to wrap there. Brendan, there's a question that I always like to ask authors that come on the show, which is this. Imagine, if you could, the ideal reader for this wonderful book, The Violin Conspiracy. Somebody who's just picking up everything you're putting down, somebody who is just receiving your work in the way that you'd hope to be received in your wildest dreams. And then this person finishes reading The Violin Conspiracy. It's sitting on their lap. Describe for me in a word or a phrase how does that person feel? What is the feeling you've left them with?
Great question. Let's go with open. Just open to receiving stuff that they had not gotten before. Now I'm open to getting it. Yeah. How's that? Was that good?
That is great. I've never heard that one before either, which is always great. So that is amazing. All right. What a great way to end. Folks, this is the book. It's fantastic. And that, Brendan, was just a joy. What a joy. I feel so happy now having done this interview. You are rubbing off on me. This is great. Dude.
Well, thanks. It'll be better if you show me where you got that dope hat. I'd really like that. Then, then we know it's cool.
Macy's.
No, dude, seriously?
Dude, it was just sitting on this rack. There was only like 2 hats. I didn't even know it was like, I think somebody just left it there from another department or something. I like looked at it. I picked this thing up. I'm like, did somebody just leave this here? And then there was a tag on it. I'm like, I'm just buying this thing.
Wow.
Anyway, cool. I think I don't even know what it is.
I don't either, but it is dope.
Thank you. You got a really tight hat game too. I've noticed over your interviews.
I try to, because I shave this and it gets really, really cold. So, you're in these places doing these book signings and it's cold. It's like, so I always wear a hat, and I have my little blazer on and bro hat love. I have my blazer on and I look all great. And then I got the hat game going. So yeah, that's my thing. That's going to be my thing.
All right. All right, well, folks, we will be back next week on Thoughtful Bro with Jean Hanf-Korelitz talking about The Latecomers, her new book. It's going to be fantastic. Brendan, it has been such a pleasure and an honor. I mean, it seems like from here, I'm just going to be thinking about that day way back when I talked to you when you were just a debut author, but it seems like there's great things in store. Dude,
okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's really nice of you to say, Mark. This has been an absolute pleasure and an honor for me. Thank you so much for having me on. I really, really appreciate it. And dude, I'm so glad that we're like, we're book bros. Yeah. Cause we're both with the same, same publisher. So that's awesome. Hope we get to, hang out sometime soon.
Oh, we're going to hang out for sure. All right, folks, thanks for joining us. And buy The Violin Conspiracy. You will not be disappointed. Just set aside about 4 hours on a rainy afternoon and woo, it's going to be great. All right. See you next week, folks.